We all believe we control more than we do, especially when it comes to the actions of others. Friends, colleagues, fellow humans, we've all experienced the unsettling silence, the unanswered message, the lingering question, why haven't they reached out? We know they want to, we feel it, we see glimpses of it, yet the contact remains elusive. Today, I want to delve into the potential reasons behind this perplexing phenomenon, not to justify inaction, but to foster understanding. First, let's consider the landscape of internal conflict. We are complex beings, a tapestry of desires and fears. Imagine someone longing to connect, yet paralyzed by the fear of rejection, haunted by past wounds, or wrestling with deep-seated insecurities. Their desire is genuine, but it's locked in a battle with their inner demons. They might yearn for your presence, but the risk of vulnerability feels insurmountable. It is important to remember that people are fighting battles we know nothing about. Secondly, we must acknowledge the weight of external circumstances. Life rarely unfolds according to our plans. Demanding careers, strained family dynamics, geographical separations, societal expectations. These factors can create formidable barriers. A person may genuinely wish to connect, but their circumstances may currently make it impossible. We should extend compassion, recognizing that their silence might stem from overwhelming pressures beyond their immediate control. Finally, let us confront the illusion of control. We often believe we can dictate the actions of others. We think that if someone wants something enough, they will just do it. However, the reality is far more nuanced. Understanding the reasons behind their lack of contact does not mean accepting their behavior or staying in a situation that hurts you. It does mean that we are aware of the complexity of the human experience and that we can react in a way that is more productive for our own mental health. It can also help us to recognize that we are not the cause of someone else's actions. Imagine a finely tuned instrument, capable of producing beautiful melodies, yet riddled with internal dissonance. This dissonance, this internal conflict, is what often silences the very voices we yearn to hear. The desire is there, a genuine, heartfelt pull towards connection. But it's locked in a fierce battle with a multitude of opposing forces, forces that can be as subtle as a whisper or as deafening as a roar. One of the most potent adversaries in this internal struggle is fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection, fear of repeating past mistakes. This fear can manifest as a paralyzing anxiety, a sense of impending doom that overshadows the longing for connection. The individual might envision the potential joy of reaching out, only to be overwhelmed by the imagined pain of a negative response. They replay scenarios of awkward silences, misinterpretations, and the sting of perceived indifference. This fear, often rooted in past experiences, creates a self-protective barrier, a wall that keeps them locked within their own emotional fortress. They want to extend a hand, but the imagined risk of being burned feels too great. Insecurity, another formidable opponent, whispers insidious doubts into their ear. They question their worthiness, their value, their ability to maintain a meaningful connection. Am I interesting enough? Will they truly want to hear from me? What if I disappoint them? These self-doubts create a sense of inadequacy, a belief that they are somehow less deserving of connection. They convince themselves that their presence is a burden, their voice an intrusion. This insecurity fuels a reluctance to reach out, a fear of being seen as needy or intrusive. Past trauma, the silent architect of emotional walls, can also play a significant role. Wounds inflicted by previous relationships, betrayals, or painful experiences can leave deep scars, creating a hypersensitivity to potential hurt. The individual may subconsciously associate connection with pain, leading them to avoid situations that could trigger past traumas. They build emotional defenses, not out of malice or indifference, but out of a desperate need to protect themselves from further harm. They might long for the warmth of connection, but the fear of reliving past pain overrides their desire. Conflicting priorities, often driven by societal pressures or personal obligations, can further complicate the internal landscape. The individual might genuinely value the connection, but feel overwhelmed by other demands on their time and energy. They may be juggling demanding careers, family responsibilities, or personal projects that leave little room for emotional investment. They might convince themselves that they are doing the other person a favor by not reaching out, or that their own problems are too large to burden someone else with. They convince themselves that delaying contact is responsible, not realizing that the delay is causing more harm. Moreover, the internal conflict can be fueled by a lack of self-awareness. They may not fully understand the root of their reluctance to reach out, mistaking their fear or insecurity for a lack of interest. They might rationalize their inaction, convincing themselves that they are protecting the other person or that the connection is not worth the effort. This lack of self-awareness can perpetuate a cycle of avoidance, preventing them from addressing the underlying issues that are hindering their ability to connect. The struggle is often invisible, a silent battle waged within the confines of their own mind. We see the outward silence, but we rarely witness the internal turmoil. We judge their inaction, unaware of the emotional weight they carry. This is why empathy is paramount. To understand that someone's lack of contact is not always a reflection of their feelings towards you, but often a manifestation of their own internal struggles. Each individual is a universe of complexities, and we must approach them with compassion, recognizing the silent battles they may be fighting. The world we inhabit is a complex tapestry of obligations, pressures, and unforeseen events. We are not isolated islands, but rather interconnected beings navigating a sea of external demands. These demands can create formidable barriers, preventing us from reaching out, even when our hearts yearn for connection. It's crucial to recognize that the lack of contact might not be a reflection of diminished feelings, but rather a consequence of these external forces shaping an individual's reality. Consider the weight of demanding careers. In today's fast-paced world, many individuals are burdened with relentless work schedules, tight deadlines, and constant pressure to perform. Their professional lives can consume vast amounts of their time and energy, leaving little room for personal connections. They might genuinely desire to reach out, but the sheer exhaustion and mental fatigue prevent them from doing so. The constant barrage of work-related stress can drain their emotional reserves, making it difficult to engage in meaningful communication. They might find themselves trapped in a cycle of work-sleep-repeat, where the simple act of sending a message feels like an insurmountable task. Family obligations can also create significant barriers. Caring for elderly parents, raising young children, or navigating complex family dynamics can consume a substantial portion of an individual's time and emotional bandwidth. They might be dealing with challenging family situations, such as illness, financial difficulties, or interpersonal conflicts, which demand their undivided attention. In such circumstances, reaching out to others might take a back seat to more pressing responsibilities. They might feel guilty for neglecting their relationships, but the weight of their family obligations leaves them with little choice. Geographical distance can also play a significant role. Living in different cities, countries, or even time zones can create logistical challenges that hinder communication. The physical separation can make it difficult to maintain regular contact, especially when coupled with busy schedules and differing lifestyles. The individual might struggle with feelings of isolation and longing, but the practical difficulties of bridging the distance can feel overwhelming. They might rely on technology to stay connected, but the limitations of virtual communication can create a sense of detachment. Social pressures and expectations can also influence an individual's behavior. They might feel constrained by societal norms or cultural expectations that discourage them from expressing their emotions or reaching out for support. They might fear being judged or perceived as weak if they openly acknowledge their desire for connection. They might feel pressured to conform to certain social roles or maintain a facade of strength, which prevents them from being vulnerable and authentic. Unforeseen life events, such as illness, financial hardship, or personal crises, can also create significant disruptions. These events can throw an individual's life into chaos, demanding their immediate attention and resources. They might be struggling to cope with their own challenges, leaving little room for maintaining external relationships. They might feel overwhelmed by their circumstances, making it difficult to communicate their needs or reach out for support. The accumulation of these external pressures can create a sense of overwhelm, leading to emotional exhaustion and social withdrawal. The individual might feel trapped in a cycle of stress and anxiety, making it difficult to prioritize their relationships. They might genuinely desire to connect, but the weight of their circumstances leaves them feeling paralyzed. It is crucial to remember that we are all navigating our own unique challenges. We must extend compassion and understanding, recognizing that the lack of contact might not be a reflection of diminished feelings, but rather a consequence of the external forces shaping an individual's reality. We often operate under the assumption that we have a significant degree of control over the actions and behaviors of others. We believe that if someone truly wants something, they will simply make it happen. We construct narratives where desire translates directly into action, where intentions are flawlessly executed. This illusion of control, however, sets us up for disappointment and misunderstanding. It blinds us to the complex interplay of internal and external factors that shape human behavior. We tend to project our own values and priorities onto others, assuming they operate with the same logic and motivations. We believe that if we were in their shoes, we would act in a certain way, therefore, they should too. We fail to recognize that each individual has their own unique set of circumstances, beliefs, and emotional responses. We underestimate the power of internal conflicts and external pressures, dismissing them as mere excuses or justifications. This illusion of control can lead to feelings of frustration, resentment, and even anger. We feel betrayed when someone doesn't meet our expectations, interpreting their inaction as a personal rejection or a lack of care. We construct narratives where their silence is a deliberate choice, a calculated act of indifference. We fail to consider that their behavior might stem from fear, insecurity, or overwhelming circumstances beyond their immediate control. We often confuse understanding with condoning. We believe that acknowledging the reasons behind someone's inaction equates to accepting their behavior or excusing their lack of effort. We fear that by understanding their perspective, we are somehow validating their choices and diminishing our own needs. However, understanding does not mean condoning. It simply means recognizing the complexity of human behavior and acknowledging that people are not always able to act in accordance with their desires. The illusion of control can also prevent us from taking responsibility for our own emotional well-being. We become dependent on others to validate our worth and fulfill our needs, placing the burden of our happiness on their actions. We fail to recognize that we have the power to choose how we respond to their behavior, regardless of their motivations. We relinquish our agency, allowing their inaction to dictate our emotional state. Moreover, the illusion of control can hinder our ability to communicate effectively. We approach conversations with an agenda, attempting to manipulate or persuade the other person to act in a certain way. We fail to listen empathetically, to understand their perspective, and to acknowledge their emotional reality. We prioritize our own needs over theirs, creating a power dynamic that undermines genuine connection. It's vital to embrace the reality that we cannot control the actions of others. We can only control our own responses and choices. We can choose to respond with understanding, compassion, and empathy, recognizing that their behavior might stem from factors beyond our comprehension. We can choose to prioritize our own emotional well-being, setting boundaries and focusing on our own needs. We can choose to communicate effectively, expressing our feelings while respecting their autonomy. Recognizing the illusion of control is not about relinquishing hope or accepting inaction. It's about shifting our perspective, acknowledging the complexity of human behavior, and empowering ourselves to navigate relationships with greater understanding and resilience. It is about accepting that we don't know the whole story, and that sometimes the most compassionate response is to accept what is and focus on what we can control. In essence, understanding why someone might not contact you, despite their desire, requires us to move beyond simplistic assumptions and embrace the complexities of human experience. It's about recognizing the silent battles fought within the confines of their minds, the overwhelming weight of external circumstances, and the inherent limitations of our perceived control. We must cultivate empathy, acknowledging that their inaction is often a reflection of their own struggles, not a deliberate rejection of us. This understanding doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does allow for a more compassionate and realistic perspective. It empowers us to prioritize our own well-being, to set boundaries, and to navigate relationships with greater resilience. We must remember that we are all on our own journeys, each carrying our own burdens, and that sometimes the most powerful response is to meet others with understanding and ourselves with self-compassion. Thank you for your time, your open hearts, and your willingness to delve into these nuanced aspects of human connection. I hope this exploration has offered you a new perspective and a greater sense of peace.